The first time she blocked my gate, I thought it was just a mistake, but the third time it happened, I realized this was not random. This was intentional, and the worst part was the way she looked at me like I was the one causing the problem even. Though her car was sitting right in front of my only access road like she owned the place, that morning I had a full load scheduled. My logging truck was ready and I needed to get through the gate early, but when I walked outside there, it was, again, her Tesla parked perfectly across my entrance, not slightly off, not careless, but placed in a way that made it impossible for anything large to pass through, and she was nowhere to be seen. I stood there for a moment just staring at it, trying to stay calm, because this had already happened before, and every time it turned into the same argument, the same excuses, and the same attitude like rules only applied to everyone else. I walked over and knocked on her door, and after a few seconds she opened. It slowly, already looking annoyed before I even said anything, and I told her calmly that her car was blocking my gate again and I needed her to move it right now. She sighed like I had just interrupted something important and said she would move it when she was ready because she was busy, and that hit different this time because it was not just disrespect, it was deliberate control. Before this goes further, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Karen Stories Daily because situations like this escalate in ways you would not expect, and you are going to want to hear how this one unfolds. I told her again more firmly that I had work to do and I could not wait around for her schedule and that she needed to move the car immediately. And she stepped outside, looked at the gate, then back at me and said, maybe you should plan better next time if your job depends on access. That was the moment I realized talking was not fixing anything. This had been going on for weeks, small things. At first complaints about noise, comments about my truck, then suddenly this parking issue that kept repeating every few days like she was testing how far she could push it. I went back to my truck and sat there for a minute thinking. Because reacting out of anger would only make things worse, and I knew that, but at the same time, I could not keep letting this happen every single time I needed to work, so I did the one thing I had not done yet. I called the HOA directly and reported the issue properly. Documented every time she blocked access, sent photos, timestamps, everything, and for a moment I thought finally this would be handled the right way, but nothing changed. Days passed, then weeks, and she kept doing it sometimes, early morning, sometimes late afternoon, always at the worst possible time, like she knew exactly when it would cause the most disruption, and every time I spoke to her, she acted like she was doing nothing wrong. One morning, it got worse. I had a delivery coming in, a large load. That could not be delayed. And when I stepped outside there, it was again the same car in the same spot, completely blocking everything, and this time I felt something shift inside me, not anger, but clarity. I walked over again, knocked on her door, and this time, she did not even open it. She knew exactly what she was doing. I called her phone, left a message, waited 10 minutes, nothing. At that point, I had two choices. Either cancel everything, lose the job, and let this continue, or take control of the situation in a way that would make sure it never happened again. I chose control, but not the way she expected. I got back into my truck, and instead of reacting blindly, I paused because every action has consequences, and I was not about to make a mistake that would cost me everything I had worked for, so I stepped out again, took clear photos of the situation, documented the blocked access from multiple angles, and called local enforcement to report that my property access was being repeatedly obstructed. While I was waiting, I could see her watching from the window, not coming out, not saying anything, just observing like she was waiting to see what I would do next. The officers arrived and I explained everything, showed them the previous reports, the photos, the repeated pattern, and even they could see this was not a one-time issue, this was ongoing and deliberate. They knocked on her door, and this time she opened it quickly, acting surprised like she had no idea what was going on, and started explaining that she was just parking temporarily and that I was overreacting, but the evidence said otherwise. The officer warned her clearly that blocking access like that, especially repeatedly, could lead to serious consequences, and she needed to stop immediately. For a moment, it looked like that would be the end of it. But as soon as the officers left, she looked at me and said, "This is not over. You do not control this neighborhood." And that sentence told me everything. This was never about parking. This was about power, and she still thought she had it. What she did not understand was that I had already decided something important. I was done reacting from that point on. Everything I did would be calculated, documented, and handled. in a way that made sure this situation ended for good, because some people only stop when they realize they have gone too far, and by the time she figured that out, it was already going to be too late. The next morning, everything changed because I was ready for it this time, and I was not going to let her control my day again. I had already spoken to the right people, filed proper reports, and made sure everything was documented. So when I stepped outside and saw her Tesla blocking my gate again, I did not feel angry, I felt prepared. Instead of going to her door, I made one call, and within a short time, a tow truck showed up with authorization to remove any vehicle blocking private access. And when the driver saw the car, he confirmed everything and started the process without hesitation. That is when she finally came running out of her house, yelling, telling him to stop, saying he had no right to touch her car. But the driver stayed calm and told her clearly that the vehicle was illegally blocking access and had already been reported multiple times. She turned to me expecting me to back down like before, but this time I did not move. I just stood there watching, because everything happening now was the result of her own choices. Within minutes, her car was lifted and placed onto the tow truck, and for the first time since this started, she looked completely shocked, like she did not believe it could actually happen to her. She kept arguing, saying she would report everyone involved. But it did not change anything, because now it was no longer about opinions, it was about rules being enforced properly. After that day, the problem disappeared completely. No more blocked gate, no more excuses, no more control games. The neighborhood got quiet again, and I was finally able to work without interruption. Sometimes people keep pushing limits because no one stops them, and the moment someone finally does, everything changes. If you made it this far, let me know what you would have done in this situation, and share this with someone who has dealt with neighbors like this. And do not forget to subscribe to Karen Stories Daily for more real stories like this.